and welcome to The Conversation. I am your host, Carla Barnett. Tonight, we are tackling a very sensitive topic that has become a critical issue in Belize with major implications for the economy, the workforce, and the health of our nation, and the overall quality of Belizean lives. Obesity is now recognized by many global medical research institutions as a chronic disease. They explain that obesity is a complicated public health issue that medical experts are now acknowledging has multiple factors. These include physical, psychological, and genetic causes. The statistics on obesity in Belize are alarming. 54.8%, or 1 in every 2 adults in Belize, is either overweight or obese. The 2016 statistics show that an estimated 31.5% of adult women age 18 and older and 16.5% of adult men are obese. From mere observation, those numbers are expected to be even higher today. The statistics are just as grim for children. 28.5% of children in Belize between the ages of 5 to 19 are either overweight or obese, with 12.2% of those being obese. That means that almost 1 in every 3 children in Belize is either overweight or obese. UNICEF reports that in Belize, the highest percentage of children under 5 who are overweight or obese, that is 11% of them, can be found in Belize City. The majority, 9%, can be found in the south side, where poverty is the highest. The Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, expressed that obesity is no longer only a problem in developed countries, but is now a critical issue for developing countries, especially since this disease is affecting a significant number of children. To help us to understand more about obesity and how to combat this disease, I am pleased to have with us Dr. Jorge Luis Hidalgo. Dr. Hidalgo is an internist and an internationally recognized leader in the field of intensive care medicine. He was a pioneer of critical care medicine in Central America and the Caribbean. Due to his contribution in the field of intensive care, he has been awarded for 5 consecutive years with the Presidential Citation Award from the American Society of Intensive Care Medicine. Good evening and welcome to the show, Dr. Hidalgo. How are you this evening?
I'm okay, and thank you for having me tonight.
It's our pleasure to have you with us. Can we start off with the basics, Doc? What is obesity and how is it measured?
Well, as you already mentioned, obesity is becoming an important health issue. And obesity is essentially defined as the body mass index more than 30. Just to give you, just for the public, the normal weight is body mass index 18.5 to 25.
18.5 to 25, right.
25 to 30 is defined by overweight. 30 and less than 35 is defined as obesity type 1.
Right.
35 to less than 40 is defined as obesity type 2.
Right.
And unfortunately, and this is becoming a problem for those that are body mass index more than 40 is considered as an basically a morbidly
obese. That's where you would get into that definition of morbidly obese. What are the main causes of obesity?
Well, it's it's a multifactorial, we can say, and then for most of the time it could be related with the type of our habits, the type of food, the lack of exercise, lack of physical activity, but also could be many other reasons. Could be genetic reasons, the way that the body is going to process the food.
Right.
It could be also related with medical conditions, and one of the most common one is the thyroid issues, hypothyroidism.
Right.
Could be also related with also other conditions like the way of the body forms cortisol in the adrenal glands.
Right.
That predispose people to gain weight. Pregnancy even, no,
right.
can cause because then the woman, gain some weight, and then after the pregnancy, sometimes it's difficult to lose that weight.
Right.
I mean that is among many other things, but also you mentioned and psychological aspect, and especially in times of COVID, you see there are many people that it's been very challenged to manage the COVID pandemic, and then depression.
Right.
Depression is an important cause.
That may lead to eating more.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, those are, to mention some causes.
And obesity can lead to other diseases, doesn't it? Aren't they related to other diseases? What other diseases are we talking about?
Well, obesity can lead to many diseases, and even we can go from the head to the toe. No? It can predispose to someone to have a stroke. It can cause. It can predispose you also to diabetes.
Right.
Also, diabetes combined with high blood pressure plus obesity is one of the most common things we are seeing, and it's a terrible.
Obesity combined with high blood pressure and diabetes.
And that is already diabetes and hypertension is a bad combination. But if you added obesity, it makes it worse.
Right.
You can have problems with the liver because, of course, you have a fatty liver, or you have a fat-induced hepatitis.
Right.
It makes you also to develop gallstones. Also, it can cause problems like sleep apnea.
Okay.
Sometimes you see people that are overweight or obese, and then you invite them to a meeting, and then after a few minutes, they are falling asleep. That is sleep apnea. No? Is one of the causes to that. It can also predispose you to develop cancer. Of course, as we already mentioned, diabetes causes problems with circulation.
And kidney.
It can also aggravate or cause predisposed to kidney issues. Gastric problems, with digestion, acid reflux diseases.
Okay.
I mean, it
so
can.
There's a wide range of diseases that may be linked to the presence of obesity in an individual.
That's right.
Right, and okay. For those who may not know, I want to share some information on NCDs, or non-communicable diseases, from the Healthy Caribbean Coalition. They reported that NCDs in the Caribbean cause the majority of premature adult deaths and pose a serious threat to health and development. They report the following frightening statistics. NCD mortality in the Caribbean is the highest in the Americas. On average, people in CARICOM countries have a lower life expectancy at birth than those in Central or Latin America, a reversal of the situation that existed 30 to 40 years ago. 40% of NCD deaths occur prematurely in those under 70 and are potentially preventable. Heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, and cancers are the leading causes of premature death. Diabetes prevalence is double the global rates. Think about that. Diabetes prevalence in our countries is double the global rate. Doc, do you think that people are aware of the risks of obesity but still carry on the unhealthy practices?
Yes, we always have excuses for everything. We probably, before the pandemic, we have the excuse that we are too busy and that we don't have time to exercise. During the pandemic now, we have the excuse that we are not allowed to go out and then we cannot exercise. Also, the gyms are closed, we cannot go to the gym. We always will find the perfect excuse.
Find an excuse. In your practice, are you seeing a reduction, an increase in NCD cases? What are you seeing?
Well, as you already mentioned, unfortunately, the NCDs are very prevalent. Actually, one of the goals for the World Health Organization was to try to reduce the amount of NCDs. But unfortunately, the pandemic changed everything. Now, the access to medication, the access to, as we already mentioned, activities, mean that we've seen more cases.
Whether you're at risk of obesity, currently overweight, or at a healthy weight, what steps can people take to prevent unhealthy weight gain and the related health problems?
Yeah, well, the first thing, if we are talking about an obesity that it could be related with our activity, then the first things we need to try is to engage in healthy habits, a balanced diet. Unfortunately, our diet is too rich on carbohydrates, not too much rice.
Too much carbohydrates,
exactly.
right.
You ask for a plate of rice and beans, it's a huge, too much rice on it. But then one of the important things should be trying to change the lifestyle, the habits of eating, trying to see how we can engage on any physical activity.
Physical activities.
Right, and then say, okay, you know what? Trying to park your car a little bit far from the area of work, that way at least you can walk.
Get a little walk in.
We need to invent, try to be creative.
What I've done over the years, I tell people all the time, wherever I've been, wherever I've worked, I make sure I get up and I walk away from my desk many times in the daytime. It's not only to go and see what's happening, but it's really about getting a little bit of exercise in, or you find yourself sitting at your desk all day, and that's, that's not healthy.
Exactly.
What is the treatment? What's the treatment for obesity?
Yeah, well, the treatment for obesity, we can probably divide it in two. One, those that are related with your lifestyle that you can use, we already discussed it. We need to see how those things can be changed and also impact our life.
That's pretty much eating better and more activity.
That's right.
Less oil, less carbohydrates, more walking and running.
Right. And drinking water.
And drinking a lot of water, yes absolutely.
And then the other part of the treatment for obesity is those that are with some specific cause.
Right.
I mean that if we run some tests and we discover that the patient have problem with the thyroid, then we address the thyroid.
The thyroid,
If we discover that the patient have some problems with the cortisol, then we address that.
Right.
And if the patient have some depression issues, then we need to address that.
Right. So psychological assistance.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then if despite of that we see that there are no any difference, then we can pass to another step, that is medication. There are some several medications that you need to discuss with your doctor, because as we know, every medication have a side effect.
Right.
And then we need to see what is the right medication for you.
Right.
And then lately, as everybody knows, there are some people that have some like diabetes or high blood pressure too difficult to control. Then for those patients now they have the options for bariatric surgery.
Oh, okay.
Right, bariatric surgery is an option.
So that's surgery that controls how much food gets into the stomach.
That's correct. That's correct. And even for some people with diabetes, it could be even curative and could be well controlled.
Right.
I mean that also is an option. But of course, each case is different.
Right.
Not every case is different. Not the pill that works for me is going to work for you.
Exactly.
I mean,
it depends on the particular individual and the combination of sources, whether it's psychological or just bad habits or physiological, a problem of some particular medical condition.
Right.
Right, and we usually blame overeating and lack of exercise, but clearly it's a result of complex and dynamic factors. Junk food is everywhere. Technology allows us to buy. We're marketing in the palm of our hands. There are not enough safe recreational spaces. We move less. We spend more time on computers, tablets, phones, in front of the TV. There are no healthy eating plans at most schools and offices. These factors just make it harder. Doc, in your opinion, what can we do to get the message out and influence positive behavior change? What can we do?
Well, it's a work of every day, and I think so. Programs like this are very important. It's a good initiative because then we can send the message to the people
Right.
to remind them the importance of engaging in a lifestyle changes, eating healthy, balanced diet,
Right.
get physical activity.
Right.
Also, you mentioned well the food that our children are accessing. I mean
Right.
that we can probably say to the different association of parents at school, hey, let's try to promote that they don't sell sodas in the school. They send
Right.
a more balanced menu
Right.
for our kids because, as you already mentioned, the obesity in child is becoming also an issue.
That is particularly worrying for us because the children are the adults of the future. They're the ones who are going to be taking over, and they're at a young age having to deal with all of the medical conditions that may come along with obesity. What are the kinds of medical issues that the children have to deal with?
Imagine that, well, it's exactly the same, no? Because then if we develop obesity at an early stage, then of course the possibility for our kids to become or develop diabetes, hypertension at an early age is more possible, as well as all the different problems that those conditions brings. If you have a diabetes, kidney failure, hypertension, and these combinations is probably one of the main reasons for our dialysis units to have too much
So
patients.
many patients, so
Exactly.
many patients. What is the best way you think for us to tackle childhood obesity?
That is challenging. I think so. We need to be creative. With kids, you know, is different those days. They spend too much time in the phone.
Right.
Less opportunity for physical activity.
Right.
I mean that is challenging to be a parent.
Are you aware of what other countries may be doing to deal with childhood obesity, to try and change the situation?
Yeah, well, some countries and our neighbor country, Mexico, they have an important problem with obesity, but some of them are trying to especially at school. No? Of course, now with the pandemic, it's so difficult, but one of the things that they are doing is trying to, as we already mentioned, trying to make changes with the menu that is available at the school,
right.
trying to engage them in any physical activity, sports at school, promoting more of that.
Right.
That is a very critical.
Right. So it's really about ensuring that the children get healthy food and get more active, and working through the schools is a good way.
Right. It was one of the strategies.
Yes, no? Yes. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the vulnerability of persons with obesity and other NDCs, such as diabetes and cancer and heart disease and all of that. Knowing this, what do you think more people, do you think people are becoming any more willing to get healthier? I mean, we're coming through COVID and we're having to deal with it, and we're seeing the fact that people with NCDs are, what's the word you use, the comorbidities, morbidities, that
Exactly.
means that those people are much more vulnerable to COVID than people who are not. Does this mean that people are seeing this and therefore more willing to do?
Well, you know, COVID, we've basically went to several phases, and the initial phase of the COVID was really difficult for people dealing with NCDs. And the reason why is because the access to medication, the access to the different other activities that goes along with that was at the beginning very difficult. Now, you know, many people with cancer have at the beginning very limited access to medication. Same thing with people with diabetes, hypertension. Of course, as we gain in knowledge, and those things has been changing lately, But at the beginning of the pandemic, that is when there are many people that they suffer and struggle getting access to care.
Getting to proper care.
Yeah. And now, unfortunately, it's not a secret. The economic situation. No?
Right.
Most of the people that are dealing with NCDs, if you have diabetes, more likely you are going to be hypertensive, more likely you're going to have obesity, and then we call it a polymedicated patients, polypharmacia.
Right.
They have at least 3 to 5 medications to buy at the end of the month.
Right,
That
and
is
indeed
difficult.
I was having a conversation with a pharmacist last month, and I was asking her if she had seen people purchasing less medications, and that seems to be the case. So we're in a situation where people who are obese have other conditions in an economic situation where they don't have access to the finances to keep their medications up to, on time, to get their medications on time. They are at even greater risk.
Exactly.
Because of those conditions.
Right.
Right. So it's really a very difficult situation. Dr. Hidalgo, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would want to tell us about, particularly with the management of NCDs or anything like that in relation?
Well,
Yeah.
the most important thing, I think so, we also stress people, especially with those that are with different NCDs like diabetes, hypertension, that we need to follow the different aspects, the taking our medications on time,
Right.
trying to have that interaction with proper balanced diet, trying to get
Right.
at least 20 minutes or half an hour of a walk every day, exercise,
Yes.
to trying to prevent lately to getting serious complications, no, because those complications, it could be devastating for many of those patients. I mean that
Right.
that's the message, trying to get
Right, and we really do need to get people to pay attention to these kinds of things. A lot of people hear exercise and they think it's special activity, but it's really just becoming more active.
Exactly.
in your daily the things you do daily.
Right.
Walk to the end of the street instead of driving.
We need to be creative.
Be very creative, absolutely. And we're hoping that people will listen to this conversation, and they will hear the words that you have said in terms of what we need to be able to treat with the issue of obesity in our society, particularly for the young children, because that for me that's really where the largest concern is, because they are learning what they will take into their adulthood. Viewers, we will take a short break at this time and be right back to continue our discussion on obesity. Good night and welcome back to the conversation. I am your host, Carla Barnett. Tonight we are talking about Belize's obesity crisis, and in this segment we will be discussing possible solutions. Treating obesity and obesity-related illnesses cost millions of dollars each year in direct costs to treat the conditions, whether it is inpatient or outpatient, and indirect costs to the employee from lost wages, arising from missing work and incomplete work, which also costs the employer. It is clear that we have to take a whole of society approach to finding solutions, since we all end up paying. With us for this segment is Mrs. Laura Tucker Longsworth, OBE. Most recently, Laura served as a Speaker of the House of Representatives. She's a registered nurse and holds certification in nursing from the University of the West Indies, and a Master of Science degree from the School of Nursing, Loyola University, Chicago. She's an advanced practice nurse with specialization in health systems management. Laura was the founding member of the Belize Cancer Society and has served on many boards. Good evening, Laura.
Hi, good evening. Thanks
How
for
are
having
you? It's wonderful to have you on the show this evening.
me. Well, it's my pleasure because I love to talk about health.
I know. Thank you so much. Before we get into talking about solutions, how does obesity impact the quality of life? For example, persons may not be able to participate in certain activities because of their weight. They face discrimination. So what are the things that you see that people who are obese have to face in terms of their ability to live their lives?
It impacts everything. It impacts your ability to just deal with your everyday life. Sometimes it's the whole issue of your emotional health. But quite often you're ill. You don't have the energy to really carry on your work, and it's a struggle. Right. So in essence, it affects every segment of your life, and it makes us so much more prone to illnesses. And if we don't take action, we get fatter and bigger and bigger until we become incapacitated or very, very ill. And I think what people need to remember is that we do have an immune response system, but when that system becomes taxed, things fall apart. And so we end up with diseases. And some cancers, for instance, especially breast cancer, obesity is a contributing
factor as well.
Yes, that's right. Along with everything else, we have skeletal issues. We can't walk well. We have a lot of pain and so on, backache. I mean, it affects every
part of your body and every part of your life.
It's a very difficult subject. People struggle with weights. I mean, it's not an easy thing to manage. I think that perhaps we really have to look at other ways of engaging our people.
Would you agree with the view that it is also a cultural thing, why we don't take it as seriously as we should? You know, many Belizeans applaud having meat on the bones sort of thing.
Well, you're not into the Caribbean man thing, the sexy thing part of the whole
You understand? Exactly. Yes. So there is some cultural acceptance of it.
Yes, cultural acceptance, and we accept that some of us are big boned or whatever it is, but not taking into consideration that it gets us into health problems. And culturally it is. We really need to understand why we're there. When you consider that over the years we moved from our traditional foods in our home. I mean, we grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, and so but our parents gave us like a couple healthy meals per day, but we didn't have access to a whole lot of food.
And all our food was prepared at home. We didn't eat out, and so we knew exactly what we were eating.
You're right. And then gradually we transitioned to processed and ultra-processed foods. And of course, a big marketing initiative. And then we evolved, and we're working out, and we don't have time to make sandwiches for the children, and chips and so on end up in our packages and so on. So
and sweet drinks.
Culturally, yes, we have a lot of cultural aspects. Our rice and beans and potato salad in large portions.
And it's the portions. I keep telling people all the time, it's the portions.
Especially with the rice and beans. It doesn't matter what you do. If you eat too much, it's not going to work. Too much
of a good thing. How much does alcohol consumption contribute to obesity? Is there a relation that you see?
Yeah, well, we know that it's related. It impacts on your metabolic system and so on, but it also has a lot of sugar, and eventually especially things like beers and those things, after a while, it packs on empty calories at that, not even calories from nutritious food, and it's a touchy thing because everybody say, oh, I like my glass of wine, but it becomes so fancy these days, having a drink when we were relaxing and so on. But actually, I think alcohol has a lot of problems in our lives. It's creating a lot of problems
Right.
because it's everywhere, and I think it needs to be addressed. But certainly, the issue of food and what we in our intake generally is what is causing this problem.
Right.
What we
And
eat.
lack of activity on the other side of that
Lack of
equation.
activity, but
Right.
if only we were to really understand, for instance, the patient who becomes a diabetic.
Right.
I keep saying that if you go on a diabetic diet, really when you're eating small regular portions of certain
Right.
kinds of foods, where you're eating a half cup of rice instead of 2 cups, you automatically start to shed weight.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so it's these things that we do, not combining rice and beans and
But
potato
it's easy
salad
for us.
every
It's
day.
easy for us to say, but it's hard. It's hard for us to do for all of us.
I know. I
In
mean,
this,
even when you travel, you're longing for rice and beans and potato salad.
that's culturally ingrained. In this
Yes,
whole of
yes.
society approach to combating obesity, what role do you think government, schools, media, families, parents, what is the role of each of these in helping us to combat obesity?
The role is huge. And recently, with my engagement with the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, they came up with a transformative agenda to address NCD and obesity.
Right.
And so we have to change what we're doing. We have to really work more with people living with NCDs or children and so on. But more
Right.
importantly, we recall the Port of Spain Declaration took place when in 2006, 2007.
Way back then,
And
yes.
way back then, and governments recognized at the time that we were having a problem
Right.
with obesity and NCDs. Sure, for Belize, for instance, we did develop a strategic and action plan for NCDs, and we even had an NCD commission. But the very idea of those things, you need investment, and our governments have to invest
Right.
in our
And a lot
health.
of it is investing in education because it's really about changing behavior.
Yes.
Right.
So, but it means then that you have to have intersectoral, you really have to have heavy political will, heavy government intervention. For instance, your healthy school policies have to be in place so
Right.
that they can be enforced.
In other countries, in some countries they have banned sugary drinks from school
Mexico
meals.
and some
Have we?
countries in South
Is that
America.
something that we ought to be doing?
Yes, we were involved in that with the Cancer Society along through an initiative by the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, and we came up with a wonderful action plan that we collaborated with the Ministry of Education and we shared our plans with the Ministry of
Right.
Agriculture. It's very important. We've got to do it, but Carla, something that we really have to really tackle is good nutrition from birth.
From birth.
Your
Right.
breastfeeding policies have to be in place. Your healthy school nutrition policy has to be in place. Banning of sugar sweetened drinks, but it's an economic thing. We have to work with our business community so that they can change and evolve.
One of the things that that has happened over there is I was telling some younger friends of mine recently that when we were little, we always had like a kalaloo tree or a spinach vine on the fence. And so we knew that one, we were supposed to eat those things, and two, when time for mom to put it in the pot, we knew we had to sit down and eat it, and we ate it regularly. But nowadays we don't do that. How do we help young mothers, for example, introduce their children to fresh vegetables at a younger age? I mean, we did it as babies, but how do we do that nowadays?
We have to help our children and our parents, and the only way we can do that is involve the children.
Right.
And so with our school gardens and a heavy curriculum in good eating, setting the example in the schools, ensuring that certain things like chips and those things are not sold on the compound but replaced with sweets. There are vendors replace those things with healthy little snack packages and so on. And then the parents will catch on, because then the children will go home and say, look, you can't give me chips for my package because that's not healthy.
Right. So we target the children and the parents in their own spaces, and hopefully they get it.
We have to change what we're doing. You know, it can't be all big government. It has to be civil society and parents and involving the young people.
In Jamaica, government took a national approach, and together with the private sector, they had a campaign that they called Jamaica Moves.
Jamaica Moves, yes.
Which some of us have, and it was really designed to get Jamaicans active, walking in the parks in the evening, and you see more. You go to Kingston, you see more people walking around than used to. Can we be doing something similar to that, involving all the key sectors: education, health, agriculture, business? What does it take?
It's a great opportunity, Carla, a great opportunity. I noticed that the Parliament has relaunched the Belize Parliamentary Front Against Hunger and Malnutrition. And in Jamaica, the Jamaica Moves was really championed by the Minister of Health. And so there's great opportunity for parliamentarians, for instance, to champion that and working with their constituents and communities. That's what we need. We need action. We really, everybody has to step up and champion those initiatives.
Right. If we don't do anything now, what will the workforce look like in 10 to 20 years when
oh my goodness,
our young children with such a high incidence of childhood obesity are entering the workforce?
Well, the statistics is bad now, because if you were to analyze the data, when you know that 60% of deaths in Belize related to NCDs.
NCDs, right.
And so you have
and let's remind people what NCD means, and it's non-communicable diseases. And here we're talking specifically obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, those things that yes, so you don't catch them, but it catches you if you do the wrong thing.
It's a lifestyle. It's a
they're lifestyle diseases.
But it's things that we can take on individually, things that we can do. We can actually change what we do in our little families.
Yeah, what are the personal things that each of us can do?
We can certainly sit down and decide how we're going to eat. We can eliminate some things almost immediately.
Right.
We can cut down rice and increase protein and some callaloo and some other local vegetables that's inexpensive to use at the table. You know, and I should say that there's a menu created by the Ministry of Health for healthy eating in schools, and telling you how the portions of Johnny cake, portions of powder bun, how to make it, and so on.
Right.
So those things are available to our families, because that's what we use. That's what we have in our homes. We have a flour turkey and everything. It is not that we're saying we have to use the foods that we have and learn how to use them better.
Less of some and more of others. So less starch and more protein, more vegetables.
It's not making it difficult for families. This is barely helping all of us to better utilize what we have in our homes and what we can afford.
And how do we work against the cultural the thinking that we have, though, of we're supposed to look healthy. Look healthy means look plentiful. That's so we have to fight against that cultural idea. And we have to incorporate better eating and exercise into our thinking.
Some of it just won't happen. We have to have big government intervention.
Policies,
not only that, but policies for schools, banning of sugar-sweetened drinks in our schools, and getting other companies to embrace that. Championing things like front of package labeling, where the families have simple instructions when they go to buy. They'll know what some of the foods look like. Maybe they could buy this instead of that. championing those things, making sure breastfeeding policies are in place throughout our hospitals and so on,
Right,
making sure we have
right.
a sound nutrition plan. Our agriculture
There
department
used to be that strong
yes,
breastfeeding education
yes.
when, many years ago, but we're not seeing that anymore.
Well, we have baby-friendly hospitals now, but it's not enough. Where we have to
Okay.
really enforce it. And then, of course, for instance, the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger and Nutrition is a wonderful opportunity. You have the Minister of Agriculture, the Education Ministry, you have
Right.
parliamentarians. So it's a great
It's a
opportunity
great
then
opportunity. It needs to be built on and
yes,
spread
so
and
I
get
was excited when I
more
saw the
support from the
relaunch.
private sector and NGOs and
Exactly.
that sort of thing, so it can really
We
make
have
that
to
impact.
understand that it's a human right, and so
Right.
we've got. And remember, we're still responsible for our sustainable development goals.
Right.
How will we achieve SDG 3, which speaks to health and wellness,
Right.
if our nutrition
Exactly.
is off?
Right.
So,
Right.
but we have to engage with people living with non-communicable diseases. If we don't get down and have those people speak out and help us to show how changes increase their lifespan,
Right.
and their
Right.
quality of life, and allow them to reduce the comorbidities that they would
Right. And
experience from
things
these
like how to
diseases.
incorporate more activity into your daily lives,
Yes,
I think is
definitely.
important
And
too.
but civil
It's
society, I
important
think there
too.
has to be
Yeah.
greater engagement with the Diabetes Association and other organizations that
Right.
really on the ground can help through social media advocacy and so on to help to educate our communities. So those are the things that we have to do. A lot of communication, not big time communication. We've got to do simple things that people can understand, especially now with social media. It's
Right.
more
Right.
affordable. You don't have to be printing things.
How do we get buy-in from the private sector for one, and how do we get governments to be consistent in pushing
Yes.
for better eating and drinking and
Yes.
being healthy? What do we need to do?
And certainly we need to find our champions in government who will take up
Right.
these initiatives and push it. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for parliamentarians to demonstrate to their communities that they're
Right.
also, it's not only politics they're involved with, but they care about what they eat, they care
Right.
about their health and so on. And certainly that can work. And in terms of the rest of us, we've got to have policies in place. If not, some things will never happen. And when we create those plans, we have to make sure that monies are assigned to carry
To
out those kinds of,
implementation, absolutely,
yes. And
implementation. One of the
and we
most
will
important I'm hearing is public education.
public
Public
education
education, because
and
if people
investment.
demand it, people have to demand
Yes,
it. Right.
investment. And I would like to see us better engage the private sector to help so that they can. I don't think we do a good job of doing that. We know what
Right.
has to be done, but we've got to engage with private sector to let them and I don't think they're against it. I just think that everything is money. So if you have to change a packaging or so on, it's going to cost quite a bit of money to do that.
Right.
But in the longer
Which is
run,
the reality, but then the other side
yes,
is if you don't and this behavior
it's going
continues,
to be
then it's
worse.
worse.
Yes,
Right. Right.
we have to partner with the private sector
Right.
to really come up with phase
It's
plans of
a
promotion.
tall order, Laura, but we have to keep at it. We
Certainly,
have
we
to
have to
keep at
stay
it.
with it.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
Do you have any final words for us?
No, I think that this is a wonderful conversation. We've been very concerned about it for some time. The Cancer Society has been very much involved in supporting the whole issue of advocacy and communication and public awareness on NCDs.
Right.
And we have particularly taken on the childhood obesity initiative along with our other portfolio of cervical cancer and so on. But so I just want to encourage our other civil society and NGOs to come on board and let us use a strategy that already exists and start to move towards making our people healthier, because we're
Right.
we're getting sicker, younger. And if you were to calculate the quantity of time lost
The
in
loss,
terms
it's
of
a heavy economic
contribution,
cost, yes.
is years and years and years we're losing money. So it's very important for the development of our country. So I think we need to become very excited about it, because there are lots of little things that can be done, and it's not as hard as we make it seem.
All right. Thank you very much, Laura, for joining us tonight and for sharing such useful, such practical information with us. We will take our final break now and be right back. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to the final segment of the conversation for tonight. Like our guests, Dr. Hidalgo and Mrs. Tucker Longsworth, I absolutely agree that obesity is a public health crisis in Belize. Its impact extends beyond the quality of life and life expectancy considerations, all the way to economic and national development concerns. To tackle obesity, though, will require significant lifestyle changes and policy changes at the national level. Some of the recommendations coming out of the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARFA, include 1, developing, implementing, or enforcing policies aimed at facilitating the consumption of healthy diets and increasing physical activity. 2, combating social stigma associated with obesity. And 3, ensuring access to care for persons who want to get help to maintain a healthy weight. Individuals, you and I can do our part as well. We can and should increase our level of physical activity. And that does not have to be going to the gym. We can walk around the yard, we can go out for jogs if possible, and we could even take multiple bathroom breaks through the day just to be more active at work, walking up and down. Reduce our intake of salt, fats, and sugar while increasing the consumption of fruits and vegetables are all practical yet very beneficial nutritional modifications. Belize, this is one issue we don't want to continue ignoring or shying away from. Obesity is figuratively and literally weighing down our chances of living long, healthy, happy lives. If you, a loved one, or friend is overweight or obese, your journey to healthy living should start now, not next Monday. More exercise, more fruits, and more veg. Less salt, less sugar, and less bad fats. Let's root and support each other as we respond to this health issue 1 pound at a time. That will help a ton. With that, our time is up for tonight. Remember to join us on Mondays at 7 p.m. for new episodes of The Conversation right here on CBTV and on Colorblind's Facebook page. Good night and take care.